Good afternoon. Welcome to The Big Show. The Big Show comes to you every day at 5 o'clock. We try and talk about all the things that we do in the world of sports, especially in the world of Pittsburgh sports. And I think one of the things that we are obviously focused on is the Steelers, because obviously the Steelers are in a playoff game coming up Monday, and they're playing against the Houston Texans. By the way, we're brought to you by FanDuel Casino. And, of course, we always thank FanDuel Casino for sponsoring us. I want to begin here. I think I want to begin here with the Steelers and the fact that the Steelers, probably one thing we don't give them enough credit for is that they put together a roster of a lot of guys that I would describe as winning football players. I think there are great players, there are star players, there are players who can do fantastic things, and then I think there are winning players. And I think to win in the NFL, you need stars for sure. You need to have some star players who, obviously can get you through when things aren't going well. Okay, it's bad right now. We're struggling. We need a play. Who's the guy that's going to step up and make the play? Those are the players that I would call the star players. They change everything. They really do. When, you have a guy that can make a play, great example, the Bills have Josh Allen. When there's a play that needs to be made, the bottom line is Josh Allen is a guy who is going to make it for them. And I think that's really what we have to talk about. The Steelers have maybe a couple of those guys on defense, but for the most part, especially on offense, they have guys that just sort of know how to make plays when they need plays, that are winning players, that may not be superstars. And I would start with Kenneth Gainwell. When they got him, I just kind of thought, okay, he's just sort of a guy. He's just sort of someone that, they needed another running back, and he was available. I don't know that he's a great player, but you know what? He'll be somebody, I think, that just kind of comes in, and it'll be him and Jalen Warren. And next thing you know, those two guys will be, the two players that make plays for the Steelers, but I don't know that they are spectacular. Kenneth Gainwell, to me, is somebody who, when they've needed things, when they've needed plays, he makes them, And they're not of the spectacular version that you see from superstars. They're plays that are just winning plays, getting 2 extra yards for a first down, right? Making a block or a key block on a passing play, or even a key block in pass protection. Running and finding a way to run the ball a couple of extra yards when they need it. Catching a pass like he did in Detroit, where it was just a great pass. It was a great play by him, and having the wherewithal to stand up and go run in the end zone. I mean, those are the kind of players that you win with in the NFL. And I think, the Steelers have a number of them. Pat Freiermuth, I don't know that I would say that he is necessarily a superstar tight end. He's not a guy that is a superstar pass catcher. He's not somebody that really, you can go out and, I don't know that he's necessarily a game changer, right? But guess what? He is a guy that makes plays. Guy that makes plays. Guy that helps you win. Guy that you win with. And I think that's really what it comes down to. You have to find those kinds of players, if you don't have stars, to be able to win games. Alex Highsmith, I don't know if he's a superstar. I think he's probably a star player, but I don't know that he's a guy who's a superstar. But guess what? When the Steelers need a play made, he makes it. Be it a tackle, a tackle, be it a pressure on the quarterback, be a tip and a pass. Those kind of players are winning players. And honestly, I think the Steelers have a lot more of them than a team like the Ravens. One of the reasons I think the Steelers are 10-3 or whatever they are in their last 13 against the Ravens is I think the Steelers have had more winning players than the Ravens had. Even though the Ravens have a star quarterback, okay, and they have a guy who is dynamic and everything else, guess what? The Steelers have more winning players. It's one of those things where you have guys that just know how to get the job done. You have guys that just sort of understand what the assignment is. You have guys who, understand that, a winning play, for instance, might just be making a catch and getting a first down. It might just be, Aaron Rodgers, who's a star, obviously. He's not the star he was, but he's still a star. But Aaron Rodgers understanding if I just throw the ball away, I have a chance, to make another play. Period. And I think that's where we go. I just feel like that's the case. And I think that that's really what has been the best part of this Steelers team this year is that they've got a lot of guys who make winning football plays. And that's how you sort of get to the playoffs, and that's how you win in the playoffs, and that's how you do everything you can do to get to a place where you are, having a chance to maybe get deep into the playoffs. Jalen Warren. I mean, think about the number of times that Jalen Warren looks like he's tackled at 3 yards and he gets it to 6 or 7. Or catches a ball and he out in the flat, makes a couple of guys miss, and a play that looks like it's going to be an 8-yard play is actually a 25-yard play. I mean, those are the guys that I think really are the difference for the Steelers. They don't have superstars. Now, DK Metcalf is a superstar, but he's really only played like that twice this entire year. I mean, for the most part, he's been a guy that's sort of been hard to get behind them paying him $30 million, if you really want to know. I mean, the bottom line is he's just not really a $30 million player this year, but he is a superstar with star caliber ability to go make plays. And I think that, with him back, you've got your superstar. With Aaron Rodgers, you've got your superstar. You've got the ability to make plays, period. And when you have the ability to make plays from a lot of different levels, I feel like it's important that it is really now, I think they go out and make plays on Monday night. One of the things I'll tell you, and I wrote a little bit about this today, I think when you look at the Steelers and you look at their matchup with the Texans, okay, there's probably a pretty good chance that the Steelers win this game. And the reason I think that is because I think if you look at the fact that this is going to be a game where the Steelers aren't going to score a ton of points, and probably the Texans aren't going to score a bunch of points either. I mean, this is a game where the defenses are going to dictate it. The defenses are going to absolutely dictate everything that happens. And I think that's the thing about this game that gives them a chance. Honestly, what gives them a chance is that Mike Tomlin wins those kind of games. I honestly think that it is really, really important to understand that. I wrote the stats today, but Mike Tomlin's won like 62% of the games that are one-score games. He's won. He's won 62% of the games. So to me, look at how this game is going to be, look at how this thing is going to be played out. You've got the Texans defense, who is really good, and they're hard to score against. And so the Steelers will find a lot of tough sledding on Monday night. It'll be difficult for them to, and I get that. But here's the thing. It's just now a thing of where I look at the Texans offense, and I see an offense that isn't going to be able to do a whole lot against the Steelers defense either. I think that's going to be the most important matchup. But the Steelers' front seven should kill the Texans' offensive line. And I think C.J. Stroud is just sort of okay. Period. I think he's just sort of okay. And I really do. I think he's just sort of a guy who is maybe good enough to, make a few throws. He's got a couple of really good receivers, but I don't think he's going to beat you by himself. I don't think he's the kind of guy that's going to beat you in any meaningful way. I think, honestly, their receivers are good, and their receivers are basically going to be, a player who I think the receivers are, maybe might make a play or two. But again, I honestly think that Mike Tomlin is a guy who, I'm sorry, not Mike Tomlin. C.J. Stroud is a guy who's just going to basically take what the defense gives him and isn't really a difference maker. Their two running backs are not difference makers because Joe Mixon's hurt. They just kind of have okay guys other than their two receivers on offense. So I think the Steelers will be able to dominate their offense a little bit. I think the Steelers will be able to beat them with their defense. I really do. And I think that it's important now, okay? I think that it's important now to note that, because it really is going to be a game that probably is going to come down to the end. Well, those games that come down to the end, Mike Tomlin's team seem to win. The last couple of playoff games, they played against Mahomes, they played against Lamar Jackson, they played against Josh Allen. They're not playing against those guys so it's not going to be over immediately. It's not going to be over, before it starts, because the bottom line is the Texans aren't built that way. They really aren't. They're not built that way. So I think it's important now to realize that this is a game that is probably going to come down to all of these things really necessarily being, talked about. But if you're going to analyze the game, I think you have to analyze sort of the Mike Tomlin aspect to the game, which is he wins these games. He wins these games that are low-scoring defensive games. Breaking news from Adam Schefter right now, and this is kind of interesting, but John Harbaugh has been fired by the Ravens. That would be the difference between a field goal going in and a field goal not going in, if you think about it. He was the second longest tenured coach, who is basically the second longest tenured coach who is now out. It's amazing in the NFL when you think about it. If that field goal goes in, we could be talking about Mike Tomlin in this respect. But the Ravens are moving on from Harbaugh, which is going to be very, very interesting to see how it all plays out. Who do they hire? Obviously, it's a really attractive job because of the quarterback that's in place. I think the biggest thing is they're going to have to figure out now what coach gives them an opportunity to continue to do some of the things they were doing on offense, and what coach gives them the opportunity to build on that. Harbaugh, to me, has been a tough guy to sort of nail down. I get a kick out of the Lamar Jackson people who are always insisting that, Harbaugh, he's been carried by Lamar Jackson. I mean, he would be nowhere without Lamar Jackson. To which I always say, I think Lamar Jackson came into the league in 2019, 2020. So that's 2, 4, 6, 7 years. In 7 years, he's won 3 playoff games with Lamar Jackson. In 7 years. He's 3-6. Now go back to his first 5 years. And he's 9-4 with a Super Bowl and 3 appearances in the AFC Championship game. Think about that. 9-4 with 3 appearances in the championship game with Joe Flacco. So it goes beyond just saying, well, Lamar Jackson, didn't get the help he needed from his quarterback, from his coach, and all this other stuff. I don't know. I just feel like it's one of those things where you have to, go through the whole thing, and you have to really, 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 you really kind of process it. We talked about winning players at the beginning of this, and I've always thought the Ravens make a lot of stupid plays. I just don't. I think that they are really in a place where it is important to note that that's where they're at. They decided that John Harbaugh needed to go. I don't necessarily disagree with him, to be honest. And guess what? Unlike Mike Tomlin, Harbaugh's actually won a few playoff games in the last few years. I mean, since 2020, that's 6 years? He's won 3 playoff games. And I think that's, one of those things where really the difference between him and Tomlin the last, he was 8 and 9. I mean, we're talking about a field goal. We're talking about a field goal is the difference. But again, I think what the Ravens have finally come to the realization is they're probably not going to win with him. They're probably never going to win with him. Ever. And that's the reality of it. That maybe, the days of him winning Super Bowls are behind them. Maybe the days of them really getting after it and being able to get after it the way they like to is over. I don't know. I just know that the Ravens looked at what they've got in the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and they've decided, guess what? It's not good enough. And, I'm sure because Harbaugh won a Super Bowl and, has had some success and, has won in the playoffs, you know what? I'm sure they gave him a little bit longer than they probably wanted to. He won a playoff game the other day. I thought that was important. It's so important to know that, to understand that, to realize that this organization decided to move on. And I'm talking about the Ravens because they want better. They want better from Mike Tomlin. And from John Harbaugh. And, the Steelers probably would have been in a similar situation had that field goal gone through the uprights instead of right. Maybe. Period. That's just what it is. And I think that's really the realization is, that the Steelers might not have, but Harbaugh and Tomlin are very similar. They both had a lot of really good success early on, and then guess what? Not so much lately. Period. Not so much lately. That's where we're talking about. That's where they're at. That's where we're at. I just feel like it's important to realize that. I just do. It's just one of these things where I think that you have as an organization you have to come to a realization or whatever that, maybe, this isn't working anymore. Maybe this isn't working anymore. Maybe this isn't going to be good enough anymore. Maybe we have to do things better, and I just believe that. The Ravens gave him a number of opportunities to try and, get it right. And they felt like he wasn't going to be the guy that got it right for whatever reason. It's just one of those things that, they probably sat down with John Harbaugh, said, hey, what are some of the things that have gone wrong? It could have been, and again, I don't even know, all the ins and outs of it yet, but I would be willing to bet they probably sat down and talked with him. And, he might have been stubborn about the fact that, hey, I don't need to make changes, or I don't feel like I should make changes and all this other stuff, but the bottom line is, it's just going to be a situation of where the Ravens also made this decision. They didn't care that he's going to be the number one name on the list. They didn't care. And that's really what it is. I think that's the key to all of it. That's the key. It's just easily for them. They decided, yes, we have a good coach. Yes, we've had a coach that had success. Yes, we've had a coach that has won a Super Bowl. And yes, if we fire him, he'll have a job in 5 minutes if he wants it. Period. If he wants it. That's just, to me, now what they have to decide. And I think that's really, really important. Honestly. I think they have to decide that, if that's what they want. So, anyway, it's important now when we go through these things to really realize what it is, honestly, what it is that these organizations go through. But they finally came to the conclusion that the fact that he was going to get a job immediately doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Isn't a factor at all. It was, but now it's not. And you know what? Harbaugh will be a guy, and I think just like Kevin Stefanski, who didn't have as much success, but I think people think is a good coach, those two guys will probably get another job in this cycle if they want it. And if they want it and they want to go do it, they'll go. They'll get a job. The Ravens have figured that out and said, you know what, I can't worry about that anymore. Can't worry about who gets him and who hires him and, how much success he has somewhere else, because the reality is we just feel like there's not been nearly as much success here. And so I feel like it's interesting. There's some jobs that are open that I think might interest him. I think the Giants job is the one that everybody sort of believes is the best job on the market right now, right? And they've got a young quarterback in place. And the one thing I think Harbaugh will do is, bring some sort of structure to what they do up there. That's an interesting job, obviously. I think, he would be interested in that. The Jets job, I don't think that he would want that job. The Browns job would be intriguing. I don't know if he'd want to stay in the AFC North, but maybe he would. That would be an intriguing job if he were to take that. The other jobs that are open, let's see. I don't think Tennessee fired their guy. We've got the Raiders job. I don't know that John Harbaugh would want to get, because he doesn't have to. The people that have to take the Raiders job are people that are in a bad place, period. And I think that, you look at it and you keep going down the list of the jobs that are open, it feels to me like the job, Arizona opened up too. I don't know that he'd have any interest in that either. But it feels to me like the job that if he would want it, he could probably have the Giants job or the Browns job, and both of those jobs probably are intriguing, because I do think that you could have some success at both places. And I know that sounds strange with Cleveland, but if you kept that defense in place and you found a quarterback and you built the offensive line a little bit, that team all of a sudden probably becomes a little bit more of a threat than they are right now. But if you look at all the jobs that are open, I don't expect Harbaugh to go after the Raiders job, because I think it's a bad job. Oh, the Falcons job is a good job too, I think, maybe. There's good jobs and there's bad jobs. And I think that's a good job. I think the Giants job is a good job. I do. I think that's the case. Period. So I really don't believe that he's going to go for a bad job. I think he could sit out too. Just do TV, maybe even go work for, his brother with the Chargers, be this, one of the coordinators or just assistant head coach, and do that for a year and then, go next year to see what jobs are open. I mean, I think when you're Tomlin, when you're John Harbaugh, you don't have to take those jobs. You don't. You don't have to take those jobs. And I think that's the thing. When you take those jobs, you put yourself in a position where you're going to lose. Period. Period. And I think that's the thing. If you're Harbaugh, you have to, you know, if you're a coordinator, if you're even Brian Flores, you're one of these guys, you might have to take one of these bad jobs and hope you can make it work. But if you're John Harbaugh, you don't have to. You really don't. You're John Harbaugh, you basically have to, go through the situation where I'm going to take the best job that is available for me to go get and go win. And that's the reality. At any rate, it's interesting if you look at what's going on here. Like a lot of the money on this game coming up on Monday has been on Houston. A lot of the money has been on Houston. And I think that really, when you look at it, it kind of makes it very interesting. But it's held steady now for a day or two, which means people are starting to probably move a little bit towards betting on the Steelers as well. And that tells me a lot. That tells me a lot, actually. I think that it's going to be a great game. And I think it's going to be a close game. And the reason I bring up the odds and the line is because we like to thank FanDuel Casino for all they've done for us and the fact that they sponsor us. You can go on the app and you can bet on the game. You can go on the app and bet on all the NFL games this weekend. You can do that and have a great time. And that's really the reality of the whole situation. You can do that. And you can do it in a way where you are basically, you are basically on your phone, on your computer, whatever, right from the comforts of your own home, able to put some action. And like I said, if you look at the money and where it's going, it started out on Houston, but it's now going to the Steelers. We'll do it again tomorrow. Until such time, until we talk again, have a good evening. And again, go to your FanDuel app if you want to make a few bets, because you can bet on anything you want to bet on. All right, we'll see you.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.